somebody be the narrator here. I will. Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be with you tonight, and we all know each other, so introductions are not needed. I'm just delighted and honored to be with you. So I guess we were starting with who's going to say a prayer? Okay, Arlene, please do.
Yeah, so why don't we just take some deep, easy breaths and breathing with God, slow and easy as we settle into our comfort place, our place of stillness and peace, letting go of the day, being in the present, in the presence of our Heavenly Father and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, welcoming our angels, sharing the love and the light. Just take a few moments of silent prayer and meditation. And we pray for all our brothers and sisters here on earth and on other worlds. For unity, for healing, peace of mind, joy in the spirit. Love in our hearts and in our homes. As we affirm our gratitude for all the unseen helpers, our gratitude for this time we have together, our gratitude. It is our will that God's will be done now and forevermore. Amen. Amen. A God. A all.
Amen. Thank you, Arlene. That was great.
Thank you, Arlene.
That was a good one, Arlene. And no offense, you said a woman. You know, that's something I like to say. But I wonder when they're going to say coming out with a non-gendered. You know.
A all. A all.
A all. Yeah, right.
A all.
You know, I got to
thank you so much for doing this for us. We're all very grateful to you for helping us with this tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just fun. Thank you, Buck, and thank you all and Barbara for inviting me. And it kind of makes me think of when I was there in person, you know, a couple of years ago and did that seminar about soul evolution. And wish I could be there to hug you right now like we did then, but we just hug each other virtually. And these days, you know, we're closer. We're face to face in a way. I kind of like the effect of being with everybody right on the screen. So, and we're going to have a chance to really dig in, because we're going to do breakout groups with 3 or 4 people in the groups, and I'm going to give that a shot. And I just wanted to preface by saying that we're in a historic moment, and we're dealing with lots of issues of suffering and evil, really, because when you think about a pandemic is more or less man-made, and it's naturally a rising virus, but it's because of our misuse of the environment, you might say, that this is spread, and because of human error and possibly evil, that it's all over the world. And so that's one example. But climate change, which is something on my mind a lot, is also man-made somewhat, and it's also natural, but we have some man-made issues that are really pressing, the pandemic and the economic impact. And these things have something to do with this topic of the soul and the evolution of the soul in the light of the problem of evil. And that's kind of the title that I'd like to assign to this, is that there's this discussion, which you can have kind of a dry discussion of what the UB says about the soul, but I want to kind of animate this a little bit with a discussion with the issue of evil, sin, iniquity, which I happen to have just written a 200-page thesis about in school, graduate school. So I'd like to see if we can change the curriculum a little bit tonight and get to some points about that from the thesis. It just, in the last few days, I'm thinking, I'd like to try this out on you guys, because you guys are advanced, and I'm hoping, and I feel a kind of a call to build a bridge with Christians. And I know that some of you share. Stephen Hecht is here, and he shares in that kind of mission. And so I'd like to kind of try this out on you, and that would be the last third. So the first 2/3 are what you have read, and I thought we might skip the supreme being section. I think we all know that pretty well, and do more of an application of the supreme to this problem of how we evolve through the problem of evil in the post World War II era. And just to preface this a little bit more, in Christian thought, what I found out is that Christian thought they had really solved this issue of evil, believe it or not, in theology and in ministries that addressed sin, right? So sin was solved by the atonement, right? Or some version of atonement doctrine, so that sin was sort of vanquished by the presence of the incarnate Son of God. And now it's the outworking of that. And there's sinners all around the periphery of the church and in the church as well. But we have a solution to it. It's faith, it's belief in the doctrines and all that. And it has had kind of a checkered career until the 20th century, when we had the worst set of atrocities ever, really. And we culminating with the Holocaust and with Hiroshima. And after that, what I found out in this seminary is that it went to pieces, at least for the liberals, right? So liberal Christians, liberal theology kind of gave up on this problem, and they became sort of politically correct. They got more into political, social justice, and the place I was studying at was all about social justice. They really weren't about salvation. And the conservative Christians are about salvation, but they have this out-of-date view of things. It's not been adapted to the current. And that's why, a lot of them remain in denial of key things, such as climate change, for example, because they're living in the past. And so the Urantia Book allows us to update this problem in profound ways. So I hope we can get to that in the final, say, 15 minutes. So if you'll bear with me, I will bring up a slide. Let's see if it works. Here we go. And do you see that? It says soul dynamics and the problem of evil.
Yes.
And is it big enough?
Yes.
Good. Good. So I'm going to walk through this, and these are just kind of highlights from the reading, and that make that kind of build on a little bit of an argument I'm making about soul evolution and the problem of evil. And first, starting with this, this really jumped out at me where it says the mortal mind becomes capable of making moral decisions, thereby affecting creative contact with the indwelling thought adjuster. So this is saying that moral choice, the power of choosing, must be present, as we all know, before we can have thought adjuster contact, right? And so there's a developmental sequence, and we see it in child development, that a child makes its first wholly moral decision, and then the thought adjuster visibly and quietly arrives from the central universe, and it's quite a transaction. So it's a very big sort of metaphysical thing that occurs here at age 5 or 6. And I wanted to just stop for a moment and ask Buck, since Buck's been thinking and wrote a whole essay, a very good essay about moral decision making. If you could just make a few key points about that, Buck.
Yeah, I can. Again, I don't want to intrude in your time and your presentation, but I did a full paper on it, and one of the things I noted, there's like 450 occurrences of the word moral or morality in the Urantia book, which you know it's a lot when you think about the Revelatory Commission effort to expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual perception. So they use morality very, very, very often there, especially moral decision making. And of course, that's a gift from the Father. And historically, there's been many, many codes all the way from Dalmatia, even through until they're still using them today. Of course, Jesus changed all that with saying it's a living truth, and that the highest choice we can always make is to do the Father's will and to love God and to serve man. So that kind of changed everything. One of my favorite guys is Immanuel Kant, who developed a categorical imperative. For those who may know that, there's a parallel to that in the Urantia book that says everything non-spiritual in human experience, excepting personality, is a means to an end. Every true relationship of mortal man with other persons, human or divine, is an end unto itself. So it's a very, very critical point there. So anyway, I use, for those who may be interested, Lawrence Kohlberg. He's got 3 levels and 6 divisions of moral reasoning, and you learn that by solving moral dilemmas. So we have a lot of moral dilemmas, as Byron correctly brought out today, with everything that's going on, especially the pandemic. People are making moral decisions to wear a mask or not wear a mask, to distance ourselves 6 feet apart, or keep our hands clean, whatever. These are all moral decisions that most people around the world are making. So I can see the good coming out of that, because we're all making moral decisions, and that adds to our growth as well as the growth of the Supreme. So, but when making moral decisions, one of the critical factors is that it's reflective moral decision. So we have to reflect on it. And that's critical, because if it's just an emotional moral decision that we make haphazardly, it might be lucky, maybe not, but it's reflective. And that power of reflectivity is crucial in making moral decisions. So lastly, I want to say that, a nice line from the Urantia book, it says, revelation unfailingly enlarges the ethical horizon of evolved religion, while it simultaneously and unfailingly expands the moral obligations of all prior revelations. So that includes Jesus. So you wonder what those morals and ethics are going to be like on the mansion worlds, because we have the vestigial traits that we're going to deal with up there that is procrastination, equivocation, insincerity, problem avoidance, unfairness, and ease-seeking. So we'll all be pretty much dealing with them on the mansion worlds. And anyway, so that's really all I have to say. But I think on the mansion worlds, we're attributed with what they call super adjutants, which also is from the Mother Spirit. So they're called, so we have the adjutant minds here. There we have the super adjutants, also from the Mother Spirit. So God bless her, huh? So,
Wow.
anyway, so,
What
you know,
an excellent
I have a paper on that. If anybody's interested, leave your information on a chat, or I'll leave mine if you choose to, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Buck. That was excellent. Really a great summary and really helpful for us because we're now moving to point 2 here is that your decisions, particularly the reflective decisions, right? So reflection, again, is thank you for making that point. And you may recall that Jesus gives a speech to Ganid about the soul. And I think it was where Ganid said, well, do animals have souls? And Jesus says, well, no, animals don't have reflective decision making. And that's what contributes to soul evolution. And but this point I wanted to bring out the second item here is about soul, the harvest of your moral decisions, and that the Urantia self faithfully portrays the harvest of the temporal decisions that you're making. And I find this to be a very profound statement, and maybe the reason I wrote that book on your evolving soul, because I was like, really? I mean, when I first read this, I mean, there isn't really any teaching like this anywhere. And UB brings this forward as a central theme of the entire text, not the central, but a central theme. So I want to kind of put to you, this is something to kind of tuck away until we have a breakout group to discuss among yourselves, whether you think your soul harvests your bad decisions, whether there is some way that big mistakes that you make, or even evil, or perhaps even sins, are somehow harvested. Why? Because this doesn't qualify. It says it faithfully portrays the harvest of your temporal decisions. It doesn't say your good decisions. So for a couple of decades, I thought, oh, it's harvesting all the good decisions, and so the soul is full of good things. But I changed, and you may recall, this is what I was saying a couple of years ago, is I think that it is more sophisticated than that. Because God wants to know your experience, and that's point 3 here. God wants to attain your experience via your soul's evolution. So let me read the quote, the third quote. There are 2 universal urges of mind: the impulse of the finite mind to know God, and the impulse of the infinite mind of the creator to attain the experience of the creature. Again, this is really revolutionary, and nobody really said anything like this that I know of in theological thought, with the exception of 20th century theology, where they began to say that the divine is experiential, and that's known as process theology. We're going to get to that in a bit. And but so in other words, so starting from the top, we have these reflective decisions, number 1. Number 2, the soul is harvesting those decisions. And you could have a reflective decision that is a bad decision. So that's somehow going into your hard drive of your soul. And God wants to attain your experience. God wants to experience your experience. And why is that? Well, that's a theological question. But we are told that this is the case. And it's one of the reasons for the indwelling of the thought adjuster, because that's how God reaches us to feel our experience and to attain our experience. And I think that's really a very key point all across the board in our discussion of soul making, because it's not just you making your soul, it's God experiencing you making your soul, right? And of course that goes into the reservoir we call the supreme, and becomes, it becomes in every moment all these decisions are being harvested into the supreme, and into your soul, kind of at the same time, I would think. So I'd like to suggest that all of us let's try to do what God does. Try to attain your own experience. God's trying to attain your experience. So how do we, the way we do that, or a way to do that is in this quote. It says, the soul does not make final decisions until death, except when and as this material mind, the material mind, delegates such authority to the soul. And this is flat out, just to paraphrase, I have a paraphrase. Material mind can delegate authority to the Urantia soul. So that is beautiful. And of course, we're all trying to move toward thought adjuster fusion. So we want to move toward identifying with our thought adjuster, right? We want to fuse. And so if we can, but to get there, there's the royal road to thought adjuster fusion.
I'm on. Thank you, Tom.
Hi, Linda. Welcome. The road to thought adjuster fusion is through the soul. So first step is identify with your soul. So have you identified with your soul? And I would say that you would know that you're identifying with your soul by a number of things that will occur. And one of them, I think, is a pretty straightforward indicator, which is that you begin to have spontaneous memories of your life, of the significant events in your life. And it doesn't just mean the good things, right? It means the poignant experiences that you've had in your life start popping up in your consciousness as you were just walking around during the day. And I think that is a sign of soul consciousness. In other words, the soul is trying to show itself to you. This is who you are. And this is what you were doing when you were a young man or a young woman. This is what you were doing on the day of your wedding. This is how you were feeling when you graduated from college. This is who you are. These memories are your story. So if you were to delegate your all authority to your soul, instead of, in other words, your mind is in charge, but now we're going to move up a notch and put the soul in charge. That is, we're moving to the mid-mind, right? Moving up to the mid-mind from the sort of the lower mind or the natural mind. And we don't want to be down in the unconscious. That's way down. People who are stuck down in their unconscious, which is reading over the weekend, that compulsive behaviors comes because people's unconscious is kind of reaching up and grabbing their mind and compelling them to, drink alcohol or become, obsessive about something. So we don't want to be down in the basement, but we don't want to be on the first floor either. We want to move to the second floor to identification with the soul. So I'd like to kind of guide you guys into a soul identification exercise. Haven't done this before. Let's give it a try. And so we want to kind of do what the UB is saying here, as to delegate authority of sort of the mind's authority over your life, over your will, which we exercise through our mind, through our reflective mind, and move it up to the second floor to the reflection going on in your soul. So if you're reflecting in your soul, you're reflecting from the depth of who you have become. And you're not starting over at square one. You're starting at who you are from God's point of view. Because your soul is you. That's what's going to survive. So that's the real you. So if you'd be so kind to follow with me and close your eyes and just spend a minute, and we're going to do a soul identification or a soul delegation exercise. So you close your eyes and just sort of try to locate the soul in your mid mind. And all of us do a lot of prayer, and we feel we have thought adjuster contact. That's in the higher mind, but it's not hard to rest in the mid mind, in the soul, if you're a mature adult. So why not affirm this for yourself? And you might even have an affirmation for yourself to say that I affirm that I've delegated authority to my soul. I've delegated my reflective life to building upon my soul achievements. So try to do that. And just give you a few seconds to do it in your own way. You can do it by really, really relaxing yourself and sort of give your soul a hug. Maybe you can see the richness of your life. Embrace the entire story. Whatever the thought adjuster has saved, remember we said harvested. What has been harvested behind the scenes as your soul? And identify yourself with that. You might consider that this began when you were 5 or 6 years old. All those reflective decisions you made. In theory, they're instantly available. So that you can become more soulful in your life. Thank you, everybody. I mean, isn't that satisfying? I'm going to give it a few more moments to just feel the bliss of soul identification. Alrighty, well, wonderful, excellent. And when we have the breakout, you can share that exercise. And so I want to make a few more points with you about this, because it says in really the 2 paragraphs down, it says, the soul becomes increasingly conscious of both the mind and the adjuster as associated identities. In other words, there's like 3 identities in a way. And eventually your identity is going to move up to the adjuster, right? You're going to fuse you with the adjuster, but now we're trying to fuse with our soul. And if you're sitting on that platform called the soul, if you're on that, you can imagine that you can look up at your thought adjuster and down at your mind, at your material mind. And so this can be a way to do your meditations. You can meditate from this place. Why do I say that? Because if your mind is running kind of out of control with too many thoughts, too many things to do, too many things to think about, you can rise up to the soul and look down on that. So you're not stuck at the mind, natural mind level, and certainly not stuck in the unconscious level. You're witnessing your mind if you're at the soul identification level. And imagine, just kind of, you can visualize, hey, just above me and on the 3rd floor is my thought adjuster, and I'm a little bit closer. So I just submit that for you to discuss in the breakout. And moving on, the next point is where, the Urantia book is just like dynamic, like wild horses sometimes. And just a short, like a few sentences later is telling you that you can achieve spirit dominion, and it requires meaningful choices of values. This is my paraphrase. Let me read the passage. The soul evolves toward augmentation of spirit control through the fostering of a mind function whose meanings seek to coordinate with true spirit value. So boil that down. Spirit is working through working through our decisions, our choices, to identify with values. But you can't get there except through meanings. You have to identify meanings. And a lot of people out in California where I used to live would say, no, you don't have to get into the intellectual side of this. You have to just get into your feelings. Like the psychotherapy and everything. It's like, you got to locate your feelings, you got to feel your feelings. And I think the Urantia book is a little bit more multidimensional. The Urantia book is saying, no, your thoughts are going to lead you Godward, right? Your thoughts and not your feelings lead you to God. So here they're kind of adding it all up, and they're saying, you become more spiritual by finding meanings in your values. And so what would be an example? It might be like, I decided to go to an art museum and I want to see some Rembrandt. And that's beauty. That's like pure beauty. And you're going to learn a little bit about that painting, some of the paintings that you're viewing, and what are the meanings of these paintings. So meanings and values are coordinated in that experience. And that is a spiritual experience. So spiritual experience has both meanings and values. It's intellectual, but it's more than that. And that gets us to the next quote, which I spent it seems like my whole life thinking about this. So you must feel the values that mean something. So you're not just having the feeling going through meanings, but you're feeling the values as you're experiencing intellectually what they mean. So mind knows quantity, reality, meanings, but quality, values is felt. That which feels is the mutual creation of mind, which knows meanings, and the associated spirit, which realitizes, which I think means the feeling of values. So let's read that again. Mind knows quantity, reality, meanings, but quality, values is felt. That which feels is the mutual creation of the mind and the spirit. Wow. So, maybe Arlene can write a whole book on that since you're a psychologist. But I mean, I think the upshot of this is that you have feelings are an essential element. And it's no wonder that, soul music is a feeling kind of music, isn't it? And blues is thought to be sort of soulful, because blues is a very feeling kind of music. And so the feelings, but are the feelings going to lead you to God? No, we're saying thoughts and feelings lead you to God. But I was reading this book on cognitive behavioral therapy this weekend, and this famous author says, he says, only your thoughts are what creates your feelings. There's no causality in the other direction. So you have to do cognition therapy if you're doing therapy. You have to change your thinking. So I kind of leave you with that. And considering the relationship of values to meanings to soul evolution. And so now, if we can make it work, I'm going to ask Buck to set us up into breakouts of 3 or 4 people. And do you know how to set that up? You have to identify 3 or 4.
There's 2 ways to do it. I can do it manually or I can do it automatically.
Yeah, I think automatic gives you 4 per, maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
And that might work. So the question is, just discuss what we've just kind of rake over these ideas. Does the soul harvest your less than good decisions? Are they represented in your character? Do you really want, what does it mean to identify with your soul versus being identified with just your natural mind. What does it mean to feel meanings, to think and then feel what you're thinking about as a way of attaining, of growing your soul? So we'd leave you with that, and let's take about 10 minutes. And when we come back, we'll have a very brief discussion. So let's give it a try, Buck.
Okay, it's about 7:10 right now, so I'll see if I can get us in there, and we
How
want,
many breakouts we have? How many people?
we said 4, right?
Yeah. How many do we have? I think we have.
We have 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 4 or 3 or 4.
Okay.
Close to-
Okay, it's going to be maybe 3 because some people are in pairs, like Arlene and I.
Right.
So let's try 3 and see how that works. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to create them right now.
Hey, all right. Oh, good. This is fun. So, what do you guys think? I'm gonna stop talking.
I'm just trying to-
Okay,
Everybody unmuted?
Yeah,
you're
we're-
muted, George. Okay.
I just unmuted it.
Now he's okay.
Having a little trouble with the screen tonight. I don't know.
Byron, I have to admit, I have never thought about feeling my soul before, or turning over the mind to the soul. That's a wonderful concept.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah. I mean, I've read that section so many times, and that's never really jumped out at me. But that little prayer exercise, I mean, I think that's amazing to just say, can my mind get out of the way and let my soul start making decisions? Can it make decisions before we're dead?
Yeah, I think that I think this text is telling us that you can make decisions from the level of the soul.
Yeah, I think so. We're a soul having a human experience, so I think absolutely it can make decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kathy, what you just said, I'm thinking, does having the human experience help the soul grow? Yeah, that would be.
Oh, sure.
Or the soul is having a human experience to help it grow. And vice versa, I guess, the personality too.
Well, this is where it all starts.
Yeah.
So,
I was just thinking another way of putting it.
But what do you think about bad decisions? I mean, you're not thinking in terms of morally bad, just decisions we wish we hadn't have made. But that's important for God to experience, that we had the chance to make better decisions we didn't, and now we realize that. So that's experiential for the Supreme, basically.
yes. Sure.
I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
those things, where you come out saying, man, I'm not going to do that again. And those things that really make an impression.
Does that go into?
There's some things go back. Yeah, we'll go back and try them over and over, and and then that's a definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing, different result. We won't do that, but those really big mistakes, you don't need that once.
it depends on the consequence, huh?
And so your soul will remember that. Well, maybe even not guilt plays a big part in that too. The guilt you might feel, somebody might not even know about it, but the guilt you end up with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I look at it as a slowing down of the manifestation of the Supreme. It may not stop it, but it slows it down. And I don't know if enough people do it. Does it reverse it? Or does it learn from so many people not doing it?
Yeah.
Reinforcing the supreme, big scale, en masse, like a funky civilizational decision.
Yeah. Good question.
Well, just
You
thinking
talk a
about-
lot about feeding your soul, like you were talking about going to art or music or just nature, anything that feeds your soul, even living somewhere where you think that feeds your soul. And that's kind of what makes a lot of us go is getting into a place or doing a job or doing something that makes our soul grow or feel good. I've just never thought about a soul making decisions. I always thought that was just the purview of the mind.
Mhm.
Well, the soul is a good mind. Still the mind.
Yeah, I think even with our free will, sometimes I think our soul can kind of lead us in that direction. Lead us in the whatever it is we need for that.
Can I
The decision is going to.
Can I bring up I know this is going to be a touchy subject, but it's a, making a moral decision, making an immoral decision, both sides. And I say that approaching the homosexuality in the Catholic Church and all the churches and things like that, where the priest is being of service to the community, trying to help, and at the same time committing the pedophilia. Okay, does that build it up and then knock it down, build it up and knock it down, build it, stay the same, go down? That's what I mean about being able to contribute, slowing it down, or even going backwards. That's a tough one right there.
Is it knocking down the congregation, or do you mean the soul itself?
Well, the soul itself, but the
Soul
collective
going
supreme.
down.
And that it rubs off on the victims or the perpetrated, and that affects family, that affects other things. Does that slow down that supreme doing goodness in her family, whether they don't address it, whether it's hidden, whether the guilt is perpetuated some other way on another person?
Yeah.
I just took that as a kind of a consequential bang, 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 bang down,
Slows
especially with
down.
what's going on now.
Yeah, I think it slows down evolution. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we consider often decisions and so on that we make that are mass consciousness decisions. We can suffer consequences for that too, even though
Join a group.
depending on at what level you participate, but because that group thing, it takes on a life of its own, and there are consequences for some of those actions. So.
Yeah, you don't have to put much energy into it, but what you add to it is collectively joined by all the other little pieces that are going into it. So it doesn't take a lot of energy to get into it, but you get sucked into it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about feeling values? How does that strike you? How do you feel your values?
If you don't have any feelings, then you're really not evaluating.
Mm-hmm.
You're just having ideas. So I think it's automatic. I mean, right? It's natural to feel love for your children, naturally. But does that have a meaning? Yes, it has a meaning. And
Do feelings after they've been thoughts become feelings? Are they motivators for action? Because you make a decision to act based on how you feel. What am I going to do? Am I going to do that? Am I going to do this? What am I feeling? Am I going to do good? Or am I going to do bad?
People that I see are struggling with values because they, in their childhood, have mixed up values with religious teachings that they've rejected.
Hmm.
And when I ask them, when they're having problems co-parenting,
Hmm.
and I ask them what values they're teaching their children, they just turn blank.
Oh,
They
no.
don't have an agreed set of values that isn't related some way to a religious teaching that they don't want to foist on their children. I mean, I have found a huge void in all the people that I've met with on what values they hold and what values they're teaching their children. They don't even think about that.
Huh, yeah.
Not,
Well,
they're having value, they have values, but they're not aware of them, right?
Right.
They're not going into the meanings of the values. But everybody naturally has values, right? I mean, I think. Right? You naturally love your kids. But do you think about it? I don't know if that's an answer. I do.
You had the parents that played the kids against, against the other parent,
that's manipulation, yeah.
that's a value that, that a lot of them overlook. They want to curry favor with that child. They want the child to love them more than they love the other parent. So this game they play. So.
I'm going to drop out and go into the other room and ask.
Thank you, Barry.
I'm going to ask them to bring us back. So,
Okay.
see if I can go.
Oh, yeah, I got caught to the boss.
Okay. Somewhere in preparation for this in the last meetings, you talk about your thought adjuster has plans for you, and he had these plans even before you were born, even before he chose to come into your body vehicle. And as I said, I was looking back, just all these memories came to me, and I realized, okay, this was probably what my thought adjuster had in mind, looking at my potential before I was born and my DNA and all that. And I see it might have been a wiser decision, like to go to this special school or to do these different things. And yet it doesn't matter. I still maybe took a winding path or a different, and of course the adjuster keeps working with me. But it was interesting to see some of the decisions that I didn't realize were even decisions at the time. I had no knowledge.
Buck, I think we should come back to the group now.
All right, we are ready to leave then. We're all ready to leave, huh?
Yeah, I think we've had enough time.
Bring us back.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Oh, only Buck left.
Well, welcome to room one, Byron.
Hey, good to hang out with you guys. What's up?
You are trapped now. Allow me to explain my theories about neo and
Breakout.
agnosticism.
Oh, good. Can't wait to hear about it. Okay, now it's working.
Session, and now I want to make it big again. We don't have a list of everybody.
No, Byron, you really don't want to hear about it. It's boring and pretentious.
We want to hear about the stolen election, right?
Even more boring and more pretentious.
Might be too late. Well, I don't think Buck knows how to get us back.
We have 20 seconds.
You got 19 seconds.
I'm sorry?
Well, everybody's room is going to close automatically in 10 seconds.
Okay.
If everything is in order with the
5,
universe.
4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see if it works. Open all rooms, add a room, recreate. Here we go. We're good.
Okay.
We're back.
Okay.
That's a first.
Populating.
Buck.
That's not easy to do, but people usually.
Hi.
Yay. All right.
Hey, can I ask a question? You know, I'm one of these guys that thinks that what we're experiencing here is kind of like a pre-stage for reflectivity. For reflectivity, does anybody have an idea? Do we tune into a thought or do we hear a whole bunch of thoughts? Anybody
Well,
have any idea?
that's another class. So we
I
might
know
wanna-
that, but come on, we can. Is it just a jump? Hey, man, what are you saying? I can't hear you. There's too many people talking. You know, how do we press a button and shut it up or what?
Well, I do have about 20 more points to make. So,
Oh,
but
sorry.
but your question was, what? Just maybe we could work on a little bit. Yeah, I lost you guys. Where are you?
We're
There you
here. We're
Where are
here.
you? We can't see you.
Hi.
We can see you. We can
You can't see me, right?
see you. Yeah, we can.
Everything froze up for a minute.
Why can't I see
I
you?
can't see
George,
you.
George, maybe it's something like tuning a radio. There's all these signals that are out there,
Yeah.
but you only get the channel you tune into. Maybe it's
Got it.
like that.
Yeah, because when I had my seraphic experience, we were in the same room together, but we weren't talking. We were brain to brain communicating. But you know, I could see, you know, being in the same room, but well, anyways, it was just a thought.
Byron, are you back?
because
Can
all
you
this-
see yourself in us?
Yeah, now I see you guys. So,
Ah.
anybody have a one sentence comment about the breakout so we can move on? Or a conclusion you guys came to? Does the soul save the less than good decisions into itself?
I think our group pretty much agreed that.
Yeah, show of hands.
How many people think
Show of hands.
not so good decisions are
What's the
harmful
question?
to the soul?
What's the question?
What's the question?
How many people believe that the not so good decisions are harvested into the soul? Isn't that the question? Yeah.
Yeah, God tries to.
Experiences are experiences.
Kathy, did you have something to say?
Kathy's frozen right now.
That's me.
There.
You look kind of frozen there.
Well, Byron, why don't you go on? I know you have a lot of points to make. So.
Okay, yeah, good. So, you know, just stuff to spend your life reflecting about, really. Does God want to attain all your experience or just the good experiences? He just wants to see you in Sunday school. That's what God wants to attain. Or does God want to go through your suffering?
How about the experiences that provide for survival value or some kind of universe value?
Same question. What are the experiences that are of survival value? Are they suffering and dealing with, you know, sinful machinations of other people? Is that saved into the soul? And I would say, yeah, because that's part of who we are. It's part of, and it's even our own. So if you have sinful tendencies, that there's something around that goes into the character permanently. But you're going to grow out of that, but it's still in the record, you might say, of the soul.
Yeah.
It may be in the soul, it may be in the record, but when it gets to the point of making the decision to survive, you know, faith commitment, it's going to come down hard there. Sleeping survivorship, mirage progressor, or wake up and decide, nah, screw this, I'm out of here. You know, it depends. But I could see that as being part of the unhealthy mind, you know, that we talked about, like when we first opened.
Yeah.
You know,
The
habitual decision making to find that negative aspect versus the positive. But
when you're resurrected in Mansonia, it would be a good thing if you had your whole life record to look at.
Mhm.
and not just the good things,
Mhm.
because you want to grow from who you really are. And so if you were Mussolini, if you then you survived into Mansonia, is it going to portray the awful things you did so that you can grow from that in your mansion world experience? Or is it just going to betray the times you were nice to your dog? And that's what you're going to, so just going to save the loving things you did. So I just think that it's a pretty easy case to make, that the poignant experiences are all there, and that you're spending time, not just in the mansion world, but even beyond that, looking back at your earth life and reviewing it.
Right.
And because that's part of the record of who you are.
Right. Byron, don't they also, don't you feel like any harm you've got done to another person, you'll feel that harm? Like in that life review, it's like,
Yeah.
you harmed that person and here's how it felt to them. So someone, a mass murderer is going to feel every single one of those, and anybody else that they hurt or offended. So, I mean,
Yeah.
all of those are going to be absorbed and used.
So do we feel guilt at the next level,
Yeah.
or what is it?
If Linda's right. And the UB doesn't say what Linda said, but it's stated, it's implied in the UB that you're going to have a life review, that you're going to see these things you did, and you're going to see it through the eyes of the other person.
Ooh.
And if you perpetrated something, you're going to see it through their eyes.
Okay.
And you're going to be inclined to reach out to them, and it's going to be like a big 12-step experience.
Okay.
You're going to make amends in the mansion worlds.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's guilt. I think it's empathy. I don't think it's a sense of guilt, but that you identify with them and you have empathy for that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the book talks about the value of afflictions too.
Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen to you is not to be afflicted.
Right.
And so if you're afflicted, you have, these difficulties that your soul has to master and come through. And that's all of soul building value.
Okay, granted. And given the human perspective of it, do you feel so guilty, or do you feel so empathetic towards the other person that I've done so much wrong that I just don't want to go on?
Right. So the people
that option is there.
Right. I mean, they're being, you're Hitler and you're in mansion world number one. These are the people you hurt. You're going to have to make amends.
Yeah.
He's going to feel something. He's not going to just feel empathy. He's going to feel remorse. And if he doesn't care, then he may just snuff himself out. So
Right. That's the alternative there that I was wondering
He
about.
doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to feel
Right.
what they felt and apologize. So there's a guilt. I don't know what you call that, but certainly you're going to be asked by your angels to feel empathy for the people. But first you have to feel remorse, I think. So this is speculative, but I will just add that there were teaching mission transmissions, one in particular, where it was stated that as one of the main tasks of the ascension, early part of the ascension, is life review, going over all of these things with the people you experience them with, and replaying it like we're playing back a movie of your life.
So in the meantime, if you beat them to the mansion worlds, you have to wait until they get there?
Yeah, to make
Pardon me,
amends. Yeah,
Huh?
maybe. I don't know.
I know, that's what I mean. You have to make amends. You got to wait until they get there. So you got to hang out. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So,
Let's move on to the next unit here, unless you have
well,
something.
I want to just say that, George, this is Mansion World 1. Make your amends here and now. Okay? This is
Okay.
Mansion World 1.
Thank you.
Doing my best.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move to the next unit here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Evelyn's only.
Yeah. So I wanted you guys to go through this different angle that I've not done before. So you're the first ones to kind of work with me on this. Is bringing in the evil problem of evil into soul making. So you remember this statement in paper 148 from Jesus, saying defining what evil is and what sin is and what iniquity is, and this is quite in your face, really, because I'll say this, I've spent a long time looking at Christian definitions of these things, and they don't have good definitions in Christian theology. They really don't. And one kind of conservative theology says that kind of everything is sin. Even things that we would call error or evil, they call sin. Why? Because St. Augustine said we have original sin, right? So even today, Catholics think you are stained with sin. So what you're doing are sins, and you need remission of sins, right? And you need to confess a lot, and you need to go to communion. And this is how you move out of sin into in redemption, right? But the Urantia book has this scale, and if I can bring it up, let's see if it works. It's what I call the scale of moral turpitude.
Yeah, we have it.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
There's,
Yes, we
It's
have
up.
it.
No, it's an actual chart that I'm going to bring up for you
Oh.
right now.
Chart.
Let's see can you see this chart?
not yet.
No, I think you have to stop sharing and then start sharing again.
You're right. Yeah. You have to open the file. File has to be open, then you go back and share. So now it should be there.
You got to reshare.
There
I
it is.
charge extra for the,
There it is.
Yeah. So this is something that I've created for our reflection. And now this was with the help of Matthew Rappaport. Anybody know him? Old time Urantia Book reader. And
Rappaport.
so what many Christians think is evil is actually accidents. For example, if you're a strict Presbyterian and you follow Calvin, Calvinism, sort of like puritanical Calvinism. So whatever's happening, God is doing it. And accidents are no accident. People say there are no accidents, but the Urantia book says there are accidents. So if you hang out in like places like California, it's like, oh, there are no accidents, man. Everything that's happening is supposed to happen. But the Urantia book says they're real chance accidents. And so we confuse that with evil. And sometimes it's, like Jesus's father died in an accident, right? And Joseph died in an accident. It was a chance mishap. And that is not, see, across the top, I've got types of evil. And accident isn't anything. It's not actually on the scale. But just think about it, that many Christians and many New Age people think that accidents are meant to be either punishing you or because of your karma, right? You got into an auto accident because you have bad karma. You got breast cancer because of your past behavior, right? Whereas probably your breast cancer is not because of anything you did. It could be the food, the water you're drinking and the food, but that's more accidental. So moving down briefly. So error, the Urantia book identifies error and evil together, but error, it breaks it out. Evil is, error is innocent. It's like innocent evil. And it's because you're ignorant or you're young or you're narrow, very narrow, and you just make dumb mistakes. So then next level is evil. So I call evil is perspectival and conflictual. So evil is, error is a your perspective is not very good. So you make a lot of mistakes. like your kid who's 6 years old makes a lot of errors, but you don't say that your kid's evil. You don't say that. But evil is error plus you kind of know better, right? But you don't really know better. You're kind of stuck in the middle. So I think of evil as meaning that you're pretty confused.
Accident, error, evil.
So to continue on with your breast cancer analogy, error would be that you were the chemical company that was putting stuff into the water. You didn't know that it was going to cause breast cancer, but later on you discovered that it would. You repent of that. You engage in mitigating behaviors and you try to make amends. Evil would be when you found out what you were doing was causing cancer and you decided, I'm going to cover this up. I'm going to buy off politicians and I'm going to get legislation passed in my favor. That's when it becomes sin.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
That's right. Right. You know that it's evil and you go ahead anyway. So yeah, thank you. And if it's iniquity, you're persistently doing it, for decades, and you just do it, and you're doing it maliciously, almost. So only a kind of satanic person would maliciously do that because they get pleasure out of hurting others, right? So we call that it's knowingly self-identified with sin. You're identifying with sin, methodically defiant, right? So, can we say that corporations are iniquitous? Well, maybe a few. Arlene, did you have a question?
I got a question. So where does self-mastery come into this? Because I think for me, I do a lot of things that are definitely evil, and it's partly because I don't think before I do it, and then I reflect and I said, oh my God, look what I did, I'm so sorry, make my amends. So I think there's a piece here where we do these evil things because we don't have, it's habitual and it's old stuff anyhow. I think, does that fit in with the evil or maybe sin as well? Well, I think sin is more deliberate and evil is more just,
Yeah.
I'm impulsive and I blew it,
And you kind of you're kind of lazy about it.
Yeah.
And you kind of know better. You shouldn't stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning. And you're gonna, but you know better, and you do it anyway. And you might say that's evil. It's mildly evil, right? But a sin in that regard would be, I'm going to stay up and I'm going to drink and I don't care and I'm in rebellion. And so you're really sinning around that issue. And you're saying, I have the freedom to do it. This is the false liberty of Lucifer, right?
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want to do. I can do what I want to do. I want to stay up I want to drink. I want to take methamphetamine.
I don't want to wear a mask.
Yeah, so the mask thing I would put under evil in the sense that you're confused about it, really. But this is my definition. I just want to make, in some of the quotes in the UB, it says it sort of sounds like evil is almost innocent. It isn't really that conscious at all. So it's not, my definition pushes that a little bit more. Anyway, so I just throwing this out for people to consider this. And you see that.
Hi, can I speak up?
I'm sorry?
Hi, I have a comment. This is Dory.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This brings to mind a person that I know and love, but who I know has really sincere intentions and good values at the heart of him. But he ends up in so many situations where he operates out of just pure survival because of the things he does. I mean, it's just like this whole chain of things that he does. And some people might say he's evil or he's sinful. I tell him, you know, it's just ignorance. Partly it's erroneous belief systems that drives him.
Yeah.
But I don't know,
Yeah.
it's just, it's like, how does that fit in this whole map of things? I know his deepest nature is very good and spiritual, but he ends up hurting so many people in the process.
Yeah.
Just surviving.
Well, then I
And
wouldn't put it.
he's had a lot of evil done to him. So
Yeah.
is it his evil or theirs?
Yeah. I wouldn't put it as sin. You know, but I mean, this is hard to figure.
Yeah, I guess, well, this definition of reckless choice of error for self-serving reasons,
Yeah, it doesn't sound like your friend.
that probably fits.
Oh, it does.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
reckless, Eddie. Yeah.
So
okay, well, he's
conflicted
doing it.
relationship, moral values, yeah. But it's good to just like have a concrete example of what we're talking here.
Yeah, I mean, reckless people, some of them, I think of evil people as being reckless. I'm pushing it a lot with my definition, that you can be reckless, but not doing it on purpose. You know, you're not doing it for yourself. Like you're running a red light recklessly because you're really, it's for self-serving. You want to get there fast and then you don't care about other people. That would definitely be moving towards sin.
Well, there's mental illness in there too, so
Right,
it's
so-
complex picture.
Yeah, it makes it hard, and mental illness is a very strong theme today with everybody locked down and getting depressed and having high anxiety. So it's a very pertinent discussion.
So I have never found a way to help this person for what
Yeah.
that's worth.
Yeah,
You know, I've
Yeah.
tried everything conceivable.
yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm going to turn that over to our psychotherapists.
Well, my one thought is, what did Jesus do with, with Jude? What did he do with Jude, his brother Jude and Judas? He showed them the better way, and he encouraged his brothers and sisters to show their brother Jude a better way, but they didn't. He knew he couldn't change him, and look what he did. He lived with Judas, and Judas didn't change. It's again, we really can only live our life the best we can and show that love that's rehabilitating. Love that person, as the Father loves us. And because, boy, I know that road real well, Dory. So we'll have to have a side discussion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just have to say, how do I not just disregard my own soul growth in relationship to this person? So I've had to cut off completely.
Yeah. This is what happens to mentally ill people. Everybody abandons them and they become worse.
I know. And so I spent years going, everyone else is abandoning you, I won't. And it's like, now I know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough stuff for us.
All right, so that's bringing it down to reality. Thank you.
Yeah, especially we don't really have congregations as Urantians. We just have intellectual work we do in study groups, so we don't really support each other as much as we could in ministering to such people. So it's a very, very big problem. And it's one reason the Urantia movement is not that relevant today. It's really just it's a book study movement. Anyway, that's another theme. But I wanted to bring up some more on the very same issue having to do with evil. And so we did so the kicker here, you can see this. Can you see it again?
Yeah.
So the kicker, so to speak, is the presence of evil alone is a sufficient test for the ascension of man. Sin is not essential to survival, right? So what the philosopher Matthew Rappaport, 40-year UB student, pointed out to me is that the UB makes it clear that you don't need to have sin to learn from. evil's enough. And so if you're on a better planet, you don't have sin all over the place, making things a total mess. And so I think this is a big statement here. And very important for us because we're dealing with the consequences of the Lucifer rebellion. And that's a surplus. I don't know what the right word is. It's not a surplus, but it's a huge deficit that Urantia has. So moving down, this statement says it's that these afflictions from evil are not our fault. The Father does not purposely afflict his children, which is what many Christians think. I mean, many. And again, here's an area for ministry. The Christians going around saying that this happened to you because God is punishing you. Anyway, it doesn't do this. Man brings down upon himself unnecessary affliction because he ignores the divine will. So this is Jesus making a very good statement. Now, two more statements that go with this. Evil resulting from the fact that we're finite is natural evil. Man is subject to inherent evil tendencies, but such natural imperfection are neither sin nor iniquity. To be imperfect or partial is not sinful, okay? So we're naturally evil, but we're not naturally sinful. Whereas Catholic doctrine says we're naturally sinful. And that prevailed until the 15th century, 16th century. Original sin is still believed by most Christians. So this is a very big deal. And if you can have these distinctions, it's going to be hard to manage anything, in my view. So then the third statement here says that much of our affliction is not our fault. So some of it is our fault, but a lot of it is not our fault. It says affliction is potential and evil, but much of it has been produced by sin and iniquity. Many unusual events have transpired on this world, and it is not strange that all thinking men should be perplexed. Jesus is saying this to I think Apostle Thomas, and just think about this because like a lot of in California where I lived for over 30 years, people believed in the Hindu notion of karma, that your karma is and the really bad things that are happening to you because they're supposed to happen to you. And I'll just leave it like this, that Job, the book of Job, is the master biblical text on this. And to get us into it, I'm going to play a cartoon. And I found this, and I hope it's going to work. I have to get out of share and come back into share. And to help us discuss the book, yeah, it's going to work. So I've queued this up. It's about 3 or 4 minutes, and it's a very nice summary of the book of Job that we could talk about suffering and evil. So here we go, and
he's obeying just to get what he wants.
So God agrees to this experiment and allows the Satan to inflict suffering on Job.
And Job loses everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes a poem that reveals his devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogue, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person, and God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God, he knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
But that's not where the book ends, because after this, God restores to Job double everything he had lost. And this, again, is surprising. I mean, is this a reward? Is God saying, congratulations, Job, you passed this elaborate test?
No, I mean, the whole book just made the point that Job losing everything was not a punishment. And so now getting it back isn't a reward.
So there you go.
It'll suck to be Job's first kids. All I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. But isn't that's such a well done tune, I think, really impressive. So the I'm actually taking a course. It's a final course in my theological training. It's a course taught at the Hebrew Theological School across the street from our Christian school in New York. It's a Jewish Theological Seminary, and the dean of the seminary is teaching this. So I got to take this course on the Book of Job and related topics. And the class is in this debate, and there's like 20 of these kids are going to be rabbis, so they got to really figure this out, right? And then there's some of the Christians from the seminary across the street that were in there. So the rabbis in training don't say what we say. We say what we get in the Urantia book that Jesus is telling John. Remember, he's telling Apostle John that Job is yearning for a God that experiences what Job is experiencing. And the Book of Job doesn't exactly give you that, does it?
Mm-mm.
But what it does do is, I think the Urantia book is an answer to Job, because the Urantia book does what God does in the Book of Job. God shows him this universe of incredible detail, and the Urantia book does that for us. It shows this unbelievably huge cosmology. You totally get lost in this cosmology of the Urantia book. It's mainly I think, one of the most, perhaps the biggest theme in the Urantia book is cosmology. So this professor that I was, we had to read my thesis. I said, and because I had to introduce the Urantia book to this theology professor, and they were not, these professors are not interested in the Urantia book. They've never heard of it, and they've been in the business their whole life. And so I come out of nowhere and I'm telling them, but it really got to that one of them. There were two on my committee. And I said, the Urantia book came at the worst moment in human history, in modern history, 1945. That's when they really finished and really wrapped it up. And right, what happened in 1945? The war was coming to an end. Holocaust was being exposed, and Hiroshima.
The bomb.
And so what is God's response to the suffering and the death of 60 million people is the Urantia book. This is God's answer to the affliction. So it's just it kind of like, so the professor kind of took it a little bit more, because I'd shown her the text and she was like, wow, this is pretty theological. This is different. And I'd written papers for her and she knew that I was a serious student. And so she took me a little bit serious. And then she goes, okay, well, so in other words, you're saying this is a revelation because we've been afflicted and we earned it. And we don't have any explanation of Hitler. We don't have an explanation of the atom bomb as Christians, as theologians. How do you explain that? You say, oh, well, God loves us, but he doesn't really, it's okay with God to have the Holocaust. I mean, how do you get around that? And so the Urantia book tells you how to get around it. So this is known as the problem of horrendous evil in theology. It's a big technical discussion. Is, well, we thought we had this thing figured out, and we know that there are sins and there's original sin, but Jesus came to save us, and we're saved if we believe it, and so we're evolving out of this into salvation. But then you get World War I and World War II. And, just looking at one country like Russia had 20 million deaths, and Russia's a Christian country. How do you explain this? Do you have to explain it?
Or that Hitler was raised in the Catholic Church.
Yeah. How do you explain that? How do you explain that the church supported Hitler? Like a big percent of the German church supported Hitler. A big percent, big chunk of the church supported World War I, throughout Europe and the United States, and they supported basically the biggest wars in the history of mankind. So in a way, that was like the end of Christianity, according to many people, and that's why it's in disarray, and that's why you need a Urantia book. And therefore, what I think Urantia people should do is just keep having study groups and stay secretive. We should just bury this and not tell the world about it.
How big of a shovel are you going to use?
How big of a what?
How big of a shovel? Front end loader? No.
We should just bury it. Definitely don't tell young people about it. Don't want to have any young people anyway. So just being a little sarcastic, but I want to bring up one more slide for everybody. And this is kind of theological stuff, and see how far we can get with it. And just bear with me. Okay. Oops, wrong one. Actually, we didn't quite finish this. So let's do this first. Let's just look at this last one. I call the joys of agonodontoritis. And it's important to get into this discussion that, you know, the quote, you know, we have a unique opportunity for the exercise of faith and for the development of a peculiar quality of confidence. So, you know, to be an agondonter, what does that do to your soul? Well, you know, your soul is harvesting these experiences of sin and iniquity on our planet. And therefore, we're becoming much bigger souls if we can handle it. If you don't go crazy, right? If you don't become depressed. So if you can stay sane on this planet, you're going to have a really incredible agondonteritis.
It helps to be an optimist.
So now I'm going to bring up another one here. I think this is it. No, it's not coming up. Just bear with me. Let's see. Get out of that. One more try. Go again. There it is. So see if this is gonna. Is this still showing on the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what I am writing about now, and I know it looks like a lot, so I'm going to walk you through it and see what you think.
Can
So,
you make it larger?
I'm sorry?
Can you make
Larger?
it larger?
You bet.
Oh,
There,
good.
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 So I think that the Urantia book came in 1945 to harvest the best of Christian theology about sin. And they call that theodicy. And theodicy is an effort in Christianity to defend God, which is what Job's friends were doing. Job's friends were saying, well, God is just. So what he's doing to you is because you deserve it.
Justified.
Right. It's just your suffering doesn't mean that God is not a good God. In fact, you deserve, because you're a sinner. And this is a little bit like in St. Augustine, his defense of God. God, according to him, gives you a wide, gives you free will, and the evils that are happening to you are may feel like they're real, but they're not. And so the evil isn't really real.
She made a pun.
So ultimately, the Christian view is evil's happening, but it has no ontological reality. So therefore, God's okay. God's off the hook because these things are happening, but they're not really real. And you also get this in Hinduism and New Age thought that it's all an illusion. What's happening here is not real. Also in the Course in Miracles, by the way, anybody's a student of the Course in Miracles, it's saying evil is not real. So that's one way to look at it. And the Urantia book validates that free will is critical, but it says that evil is real. So the second of these justifications of God's goodness is called the greater goods theodicy. And this is where the presence of evil allows God to harvest greater goods. So some of these theologians said, it's a good thing we have sin. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't have these greater goods being created. And guess what? The Urantia book believes that. Because it says, I think it believes it, because it says, the Lucifer rebellion created 1,000 times the good of the evil. Remember that statement? It says the Melchizedeks have added this up, sort of, and that's what they came out with. But right above it, it says, we can't fathom the wisdom that allows such destruction. But what we do know is it's 1,000 times the evil. So that's another theodicy, and that is a traditional Christian view, also in the Urantia book.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
Byron?
Yeah.
Excuse me. But don't they say that on a local universe level, not necessarily on a system level or thing? They talk about a big area, geographic area. So it's kind of compounded, let alone what he wanted to do in the system and the constellation. And so it grows, you know, by all the people viewing it. So.
Yeah. Right. So that's helpful to think the scope of this is not, you know, when you think of just Urantia,
Right.
it's really hard to say greater goods, right?
Yeah, 1,000 times. What do you mean? How?
Yeah, get out of here. You know, look, in fact, things are in a way worse. It's not like it's getting greater good, it's getting worse. You could have easily said that in 1945. This is worse than anything we've ever seen. You know, the Holocaust. And I'll tell you, when you try wrestling with Jewish theologians writing about the Holocaust. I spent like a month on that, just on that problem. And it's very, very poignant stuff. So third item, I got 7 of these.
Wow.
The Bible says in the New Testament, it says that this off-planet Satan, right, was ruling the world, and Jesus came and opposed him and deposed him. This is right there in the Bible, right? And the Urantia book says the same thing. And so that's known as the cosmic conflict model. And the UB has updated that. But guess what? And most Christians don't talk about that unless they're fundamentalists. Right? Liberal Christians don't talk about Satan. It's politically incorrect.
They don't have enough information to kind of counter it yet. Like we know about the temptation and his arrest and subsequent, but that news, other than he was confronted by Christ, what's after that? So what do they have to build on? They haven't even come up with a good theory that I've heard.
They have. I really, I would say Catholics have a pretty good. They reflected on this a lot, and it's not something that you hear unless you're studying theology. But but it's a minority position. But it was the majority position in Christianity that Satan is doing all this stuff to us. And so it was a really tough call for me to put this in my thesis and tell these liberal professors that Satan and Lucifer really existed. So the UB
evangelical point of view, Satan left Jesus there before the 40 days tribulation, went off and started rock and roll and corrupted America's youth.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And there are Urantia book folks that would say Satan is still acting. Satan has inspired the teaching mission. And things like that. So the next one is a little bit more advanced notion. And it's called the polar interdependence of evolution and eternity. So let's break that down a little bit. The Urantia book tells us that there's a multiverse, right? It's not just one dimension. There's time and space. There's morontial, and then there's the eternal, you might, just to simplify it. And there's a dialectical relationship between these levels. Well, there's one Christian trend which kind of agrees. It's called process theology, and they have a finite God. So guess what? The Urantia book is not the place where that originated. They have a supreme being theology. So I know this is taxing, but bear with me, see if we get through this. These guys in 1920 said that God is not all powerful. They were the first Christians to say that, because you cannot explain World War I if there was a loving, all-powerful God. So this new thing was invented. And guess what? They figured out the supreme being intuitively. But they lopped off the paradise deity. But it was a very good and healthy exercise in saying, okay, there's no all-powerful paradise deity that's going to come to our rescue. But there is this evolution of the finite God, and it's getting better and better and better. However, these guys say that evil is real and sin is real. Whereas, the Christians were saying it's not really real. And that's why Christians enabled some bad stuff, because they didn't really think that evil was real. But these guys are saying that the demonic evil is real and it's growing. And it's not like some mock battle. So what we Urantians say is sophisticated. We're saying both things are true. We're saying that in the domain of time and space, the all-powerful God is not acting. And one time Meredith Sprunger said this in a speech, and I thought, wait a minute, wait, But Meredith was trying to get across to us that that the supreme means that an omnipotent God is not able to stop bad stuff from happening. So you can have a Holocaust. God will allow Hiroshima, and it's a real battle. However, the Urantia book seems to say, when God is ready, he will intervene with all power. So it's a both and. I'm going to skip the next one and move down to the soul making. So this is the second last one. Soul making is a great theme in the Urantia book and in modern theology. So it was not known to the Western Christian world until the 19th century. They basically had a binary thing. You're either on or you're off. You're not really growing a soul. So this came out from the poet John Keats in the 19th century. And then it was refined by this great philosopher, John Hick, and it's a close match with the Urantia book. But what John Hick said is, we're making a soul through our suffering and affliction and evil, and your soul is growing, just like the Urantia book says, the soul's evolving. But he said, we got one big problem. Certain people are not growing their soul because they are victims to the point of death. And they don't get a chance. And I don't have a solution. And the only possible way out is to believe in an afterlife. If there's no afterlife, then there's no God, basically, he said. Because we have so many people that die as children or die in war, children dying in warfare. You can't justify that other than to say they're going to get remediation in heaven. And that is one of the Christian themes. So finally, there's the Orthodox view, which we rarely hear about, which says that, which is basically a soul making, but it's also spiritual evolution toward perfection is the way we deal with evil. And I think that's what happens with Job. Job has a huge religious experience and realizes this is a much bigger universe and God is with me regardless. So these are some themes that help us, I think, to bridge to Christians. So let's go back to the top. This first one here is basically the Catholic view. The third one is basically the fundamentalist view. The fourth one is liberal Christian view. This one is a very advanced philosophic Christian view. The John Keats, the soul-making theodicy is one minority group within Christians, and then the Eastern is Eastern Church. So what I'm saying is the Urantia book is the biggest synthesis of Christian ideas that exists on this topic. So I rest my case.
You know, Byron, I'd like to make a comment on the sixth item there, where the cosmology guarantees ultimate justice and innocent victims of horrendous evil and trauma. And I've used that idea to enhance people's concept about, well, what about all the kids that die in war and all that kind of, you know, that argument about if you're a faith-believing person that you say you are, consider the afterlife that's guaranteed for them to have their day in heaven, or, you know, to be saved. And they stop and think about it, you know, and it's like, do you believe in afterlife or don't you? Bottom line, you know. And so that I could see the relevancy of that argument, you know, the soul-making theodicy. And I find that an interesting term too. I think we had a little discussion about that, not you and I, but other people. Theodicy.
What a stupendous revelation we have in the Urantia book to tell Christians that when you go to heaven, you don't just like suddenly meet God. Right. I mean, which would be very nice, but you get to work through all those trauma and all that suffering that you experienced, and you heal it, and you have an eternal life to do that. And it might take you, you know, 500,000 years, and you're going to come out enlightened, just refused. Now that is salvation.
Yeah.
Which reconciles Christianity to Buddhism. But I'll also point out, back to the soul making, that it's down to mankind, number one, to stop waging war, and number two, to stop sending our kids to do it.
Yeah, right.
And that our mission, as spelled out in the Urantia book, is to settle this planet in light and life. And war doesn't have any place in that. And I rest.
Thank you.
That's a big market to sell the idea to worldwide. Well, I think a lot of people realize that, but they don't know what to do about it.
You mean?
So they make a bigger government to buy bigger guns, and, you know, get more people to put them on. It feeds on itself.
Yeah.
More guns do not end wars.
Yeah.
More guns perpetuate more wars. And I say this as one who's in the business basically of the biggest guns. It's nonsensical, and it's unsustainable, and it's life ending for the planet.
Right.
Eventually.
It's not life-giving, no.
I read an article just last night on Japan. They only had 6 gun killings the whole year last year.
Wow.
6, compared to our several thousands, you know, tens of thousands.
Wow.
And they compared that, you know, to where is Japan going by outlawing guns totally. And then they had stats of all the different countries, of all the guns. America was a big red line way out there. And then, you know, all the other European countries, and then down to Japan having nothing, and the deaths, nothing.
For what it's worth, this year, this calendar year, is the only year that deaths from disease have surpassed gun deaths in this country.
Yeah.
And that's because we got to 300,000 today.
So just to change the subject slightly there, Byron, I was going to ask you, probably should do it privately, but is the Theodore Chardin play anywhere in your studies?
Yeah, no, he's essential, and he's been superseded. You know, people incorporate his work into more advanced, but these are people you probably wouldn't have heard of. their technical theological discussions, mainly Catholics. But yeah, no, he's an evolutionary, what we call evolutionary theologian. And so the process theology is concurrent with Teilhard de Chardin, and that system is even more profound, but it's the same idea of evolution of basically a supreme being. And, Chardin took on this issue of sin, original sin, and he said that the Catholic Church has got to abandon original sin because we can see that there's something we call original selfishness in nature, that animals are selfish to survive. And we are selfish to that extent. So he said, let's call it original selfishness.
Yeah.
And then we evolve from there.
That's a good change. I mean, that's an acceptable, I think it would be acceptable.
And it fits with evolutionary biology. The findings of evolutionary biology is that the selfish species, the selfish members of the species are the ones that survive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's built into the DNA to survive.
Which kind of correlates with the inherent vicissitudes. That's what we're growing out of, the animalness, the selfishness, give me my time, I don't care, that kind of, so that correlates. That's a good tie.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the inevitabilities, did we?
No.
Yeah, but we all know it well. That's one reason I skipped it.
Byron?
Yes.
Were we going to talk about that paper you sent around on equilibrium?
No, I sent that to this other group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one.
I got it.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, very nice piece. Yeah. This I have another group that's focused on the magisterial mission, and that's pertinent for us because Carolyn Kendall, passed away recently.
Oh, really?
And Carolyn wrote this wonderful piece called "Guess Who's Coming Next." Remember that from years and years ago? And the Herald said, well, she actually, I couldn't believe this when I reread it. She said the primary reason for the Urantia book is to prepare us for the magisterial mission.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Secondary reason is to prepare us to emerge from quarantine. Third reason is to teach us to become more spiritual. So she put this becoming more spiritual, number 3. And she said, and according to Barbara Newsom, who was one of her best friends, that the forum often talked about the magisterial mission. And I had never heard that my whole life, never heard that. And I said, well, was that somehow suppressed or something? And Barbara Newsom, who was there from 1965, said that it fell out of currency. Nobody was talking about it for a long time.
Well, maybe they didn't want to get diverted, in a sense,
Yeah, but Carolyn Kendall, one of the key leaders, said it was the number one purpose for the Urantia book. So if you care to go back and look, it's in the 2008 Herald. Startling. And that's germane to what we're talking about, because I think that the theodicy of the Urantia book, we just looked at 7 elements. I think it's the 8th element is the advent of the magisterial son, because if you don't have an adjudication, you have to adjudicate the Lucifer rebellion. If you don't adjudicate the Lucifer rebellion, you still have some remnants that are messing with us.
Right.
And so you have a good theodicy because, every time you turn around, there's some atrocity. Mm-hmm. And because of these atrocities, people lose their faith. So it's, in a way, it's up to the celestial world to complete the work of the Urantia book, which was in the middle of World War II, 1 and 2, really, get a revelation, but we didn't finish the job. There's still a Lucifer party on the planet. There's still a ton of egregious, iniquitous activity on the planet.
Minions.
And there's followers, there's satanic followers still on the planet. So the magisterial son would complete that.
Yeah, I remember Gabriel's instruction from Michael before he came down. He said, hands-off policy, and not until all of it's extinguished, even if it takes 1,000,000 years. He put a time frame on it, man. That's a long time, 1,000,000 years, even if it's 500,000. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's very hard to do theodicy. Again, theodicy is defined as how do we justify God's goodness and mercy in the face of all this evil?
Yeah.
So if God lets this thing go 500,000 years, what kind of a God is that?
Yeah.
So that's why you have a lot of secularization.
If we were to get a magisterial son, do we have enough sense to treat him any better than we got when we did the first one that came?
At this time, who knows?
Yeah, that's one of the big questions, right?
Especially since he'd look all Palestinian and Middle Eastern and stuff. I'm wondering, are we supposed to be passive participants in all of this, or isn't there some active role that we have?
The group that I was mentioning is a group trying to get active.
We're in it.
Yeah, you guys are part of that, so you know what I'm talking about. But
it seems to me that there is an evangelical part to this, not in the traditionally or modern interpretation of that, but there is a mission to go and harvest the wheat because the fields are ripe.
Right.
Humankind wants an alternative to an endless cycle of war, greed, and destruction. And the Urantia book and the Word of God brings that. But if we're going to sit on our hands and wait for a savior, I don't know that we're worth saving.
Yeah, so you see what happens. We get to the point where we feel like giving up, and I'm very sympathetic.
Well, we have to save ourselves.
You mean individuals or not?
Well, individually and as a group, yeah.
Individuals is a start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eventually, we really need a good marketing campaign manager.
Don't give in
to
the evil. Don't give in to the evil and fear is a good start.
Well, and we can go with Jesus. Stop sacrificing your kids. That was a pretty good one.
That's a big one. That's a big one that's going to come out pretty soon. It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, you mean sacrificial of the pedophilia stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could I say that, I think we need to respect our time frame here. And so we had agreed to end at 8:30, as I recall. And so we might want to have any concluding thoughts or remarks before we close out.
And if anybody wants to stay on, they can. And those who need to move on into their late evening can leave.
Byron, I just want to thank you for all of the comments that you've made that are so thought-provoking. We've talked about things tonight that I've never even thought about. And to get a synopsis of the UB book and how it crosses over all of the theologies, that's amazing. I'm really grateful that you did all of that. Thank you. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the first time I presented this, and so I want to thank you guys for letting me, especially that last part I think it was a little abstruse, but you hung in there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Really
you.
appreciate.
Thank you, Byron.
Come
And I
back
feel-
and do it again with us, okay?
What I feel like, if we need another, session or two to expand, this was just the beginning, and you just opened up my mind more on the error and the evil and the sin and the iniquity, and also how it crosses over, into different into different religions in Christianity. So I just feel like this, we can go on and on. And I'd love to hear more and invite you back if we can manage to do that if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd like to develop the ideas a little bit more. And I actually trying to get this book published by an academic theological publisher. So if that happens, and I think it may happen, then I'll really be able to develop it, and I'll come back.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
But
much.
please keep us posted on Dell, and just know that our prayers are with him and Jane, and we're all family, and that breaks my heart. I don't know anybody that's gotten COVID.
Really?
It's just so sad.
Pueblo's hot
Pueblo's a
spot.
hot spot.
We're
yeah.
number 2 in the country for our size city.
Really?
Yeah, we're a very big. And so what Byron said about, we're, as a Urantia movement, we're very intellectual, and as in study groups, I think we find the support. In the smaller groups, we find that, like Dory, talking about real personal stuff
Connections.
that apply, that the book can help us move through, and how we support each other. And so as I know you do, Byron, support individuals and live the teachings of Jesus, the fatherhood and the brotherhood.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas season. Our group won't meet again until January 4th. So we will be
Okay.
Well, if anybody
meeting again. So Merry Christmas to all of you.
Thank you.
We won't see each other again until after Christmas.
If anybody wants anything, email me and I'll give them copies of what I have on this.
Good.
Well, do you make a recording of it all, Buck?
Yeah, I recorded this. So tell you what, I'll send
No
you
recording.
I'll send you the recording, and I'll send you those slides as well.
Oh, good. That's what we want. Yeah, the slides were great.
Yeah.
Slides were really good.
Yeah. So in about a
All
week.
right.
Okay. I think I'm going to sign
Thanks,
off.
Byron.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Love you all.